Hi, I'm Gregg Betheil. I'm Pencil's president here in New York City, and I'm really excited today to be joined by Jessica Bynoe on the Pencil team to talk a little bit about some exciting work coming out of the Pencil team these days. Jessica, why don't you say hi?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jessica Bynoe. I'm Pencil's Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer, and really excited to be here today to talk about some of our latest publications.
So, Jessica, we've been having these conversations offline, at least for the last year, as a lot of things have been coming together, really growing from the work the team's been doing over the last 3 years. I know you and the team have taken some time to really sit back and reflect on that work, and we've got some interesting papers coming out in the series soon. Hoping you can tell us a little bit about that series.
Yeah, so we actually released the first paper of this series. The series is titled Reimagining Pathways to Student Success. And it's really a 3-year retrospective of Pencil's evaluative results. So that means that we were really able to look at all of our programs, all the circumstances around those programs, both pre-pandemic and during the pandemic, to understand what's working, what are the characteristics of the programs that are working, who are our programs working for, and where do we need to improve. And we really think that the retrospective and the briefs that are coming out of it will both inform and improve our own work as well as the broader fields in New York City.
So let's set some context for everybody about what these papers are going to tell us. First of all, it looks back at Pencil's programs, but there was a lot of change in
Mhm.
Pencil's programs over the last 3 years for reasons obviously connected with the pandemic. But what was it you began to take from some of those program innovations that really set up the impact
Mhm.
demonstrated in this series?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, we'd have to go back further than 3 years, even though the evaluation results represent 3 years of work. We did a lot of work starting 5 or 6 years ago at Pencil to really codify what our theory of change was. And we said that what we believe that you need in order to connect students to success is that young people need equitable access to relationships, skills, and opportunities. So this three-pronged approach it really permeates all of our programs, whether they are during the school year or during the summer or in person or virtually or with X company or Y company. They all have this commonality with them so that we're really providing young people that foundation to achieve success and economic sustainability in the long run. So when we looked at our programs across the past 3 years, we were able to disaggregate data and disaggregate outcomes and look at things like what is summer programming doing for students versus school year programming doing for students? What was the impact of going virtual on students? Was the quality and the outcomes the same? And for the new program innovations that we created during the pandemic, we had a benchmark to compare all those programs to from the 2019 evaluative results. So we can see if these innovations were really quality innovations or just things that we did to kind of cover the time during a moment of crisis.
Well, look, I know from our conversations that you could go down the rabbit hole of all the technical jargon that it took to do that evaluation. And I know as part of this series, we're also going to do some interviews with the team, our program team and our evaluation team about what it took to bring this information together. But let's go back to the theory of change for just a second, because
Mhm.
you talked about relationship skills and opportunities. I know at Pencil, when we talk about connecting students to success, for everybody else, we talk about opening eyes, opening minds, and opening doors. And
Mhm.
I think over the last 3 years, we had to do that work a little bit differently. So
Yeah.
some of this played out not only in the in-person space, but tell me a little bit about what it was like doing some of that work virtually over the last couple of years.
Yeah, virtually. I mean, we had to get out and get moving pretty quickly virtually. We wanted to make sure there wasn't a gap in services for the students that we worked with. So we were pretty quick out of the gate, and I think that benefited us in the long run to be able to figure out really how to take our models and get them online pretty quickly. So by April 1st, 2020, we were already running virtual programs for students. And while it looked different in the sense that we were in a Zoom room instead of a classroom or a boardroom, we still were bringing in our corporate volunteers. We still were making sure that there was a connection and opportunity for mentorship among the volunteers and the students. We were still making sure that students were supported to, when we talk about skill attainment, to really feel supported that they can grow. This idea of a growth mindset mindset that wherever you are today is not the end of your journey, that you can continue to grow and evolve and learn. And then this idea of access to opportunity, which is the third piece of our theory of change. We always talked about that as physically opening doors. It was a really nice analogy. And here there were no doors to open anymore, but we had to figure out what did access to opportunity mean in a virtual space. And for us, when you dig deeper into the research on access to opportunity, what you're really talking about is a sense of belonging, a idea that you're seeing people that look like you in professional spaces that you aspire to, the idea that you're getting new information about industries, trajectories, pathways that you never knew existed before. That's access to opportunity. It doesn't mean you have to walk into an office building, but if you log onto a Zoom room and you're able to have conversations about all those things and intentionally think about your steps on those pathways, that's access, right? And that's how it looks in the virtual world.
So I'm hearing this foundation in our theory of change, a good research base underneath it. Lots of things are changing over the last couple of years. The team is running around to try and figure out how to just continue to connect students to success and bring our business partners and our schools together. And you've got a research team here at Pencil that while all that's going on, they're making sure that we're collecting data. So before we get to the findings, how is it that we were able to pay attention and make sure we had a basis to do an evaluation when we were all done running at full sprint?
Yeah, so first, I would really say it's a total team effort, not just a singular evaluation team. The program team plays an enormous role in making sure we get survey data back from students and volunteers and schools. So we had built a foundation. We had all the survey instruments and the tools and the different questions that we were always asking to know what feeds those outcomes that we're measuring. So all that had been built, in 2018, 2019. And we were able to use the same, again, because the theory of change is standard across all of our programs, we can use the same evaluation tools. And so our evaluation team, yes, is getting the surveys out and crunching the numbers on the back end, but the program team is really making sure we're getting the intake of all that data. So we have data from hundreds of students in all of our programs across these 3 years, which suddenly makes our data outcomes that much more relevant because we're able to find some areas of real significance, not just assumptions that we think something looks good or is trending, but we're able to really have some data-driven opinions now.
So before we dive into those findings, remind me a little bit about what those core programs are and how they differed when we moved online.
Sure. So we have our school year programming, and the biggest program there is our school partnership program. So that's where we match together a set of volunteers from a company to a group of students at a specific school. And on a regular cadence, normally monthly, they're participating in pencil facilitated workshops to help build skills and industry exposure. So roughly they're meeting once a month to do that work. Pre-pandemic, all of that was in person, either in school or at the corporate offices. During the pandemic, only until recently, we've done all of that work in Zoom rooms or on different platforms like that, right? So same workshops, just adapted for the virtual space. During the summer, we run our internship program. So this is one of the city's largest Ladders for Leaders internship programs, where we match high school and college students to paid career-facing internships during the summer. Before they even have a resume sent out, they're doing 20 hours of pre-employment training with us. Pre-pandemic, that meant that we were in a giant room at one of our corporate partners with 200 students and 100 volunteers. Obviously, that was not possible during pandemic. So again, all of that had moved online. Additionally, with the internship programming, what we had to do, especially in 2020, when there was just a tremendous amount of uncertainty about what internships could or would look like and where the positions were going to come from and where the funding was going to come from, we were committed to making sure that young people had employment opportunities that summer. So we really, threw out all those barriers to the problem and we created a program called Career Explorers, which is explicitly for our high school students. And that's an opportunity for them to basically have a simulated internship where they work on a industry project. They're matched one-on-one with an industry mentor, and they're supervised by Pencil program team members. So it really takes all the elements of a quality internship experience and recreates it in a controlled environment. And all of that was done virtually as well. So in a sense, again, when we compare our programs, we're able to compare in school versus summertime, virtual versus in person, and then this idea of new innovations like Career Explorers versus traditional internship or work-based learning experiences.
So look, given that you've just given us a framework around our core programs, let me take the opportunity for a Pencil commercial here. If anybody's listening and is interested in getting involved in our school year partnership program, Principal for a Day is on May 19th this year, 2022. And we're also always trying to place students in our summer internship program, Ladders for Leaders, where we're hoping to place 1,000 students this summer. Certainly go to pencil.org and you can find information about both of those programs. But Jessica, let's be really honest. We're running around, we're making all those changes in the pandemic. Yeah, we're collecting data, but if we're really being honest with ourselves, we thought that was a placeholder until we could get back to normal. Right. And so then we get forward 2 years into that process and you start pulling the data together, and there's some really interesting findings in there that I know is what this series is about beginning to share with the field. Yes, what did you find at a high level?
Yeah, absolutely. So each of the briefs will focus on one of the areas of our theory of change. We thought that was a good way to situate the findings, and it's what the data was telling us anyway. So when we looked at a program like Career Explorers, which again was something new, and we had done some thought leadership work last year investigating this model because we were finding it to be great, having great success anecdotally. So we wanted to dig into it. And so carrying forward the theme, we were able to look at Career Explorers against all other programs, in-person, virtual, summertime, partnership work, against all other programs. And it turns out that this particular model was incredibly effective at driving outcomes around access to opportunity. So that tells us that something about the way that we're running that program, young people are feeling an increased sense of belonging. They're more likely to be pursuing the careers that they start to touch on during that summertime period. And even most interestingly is the data is trending in a way that shows that the program is even more effective for younger students, like 17-year-olds, which we want to make sure are getting that early exposure, and first-generation college-bound students, which is a group of students that we know we want to make sure we're building their social capital and their experience and getting them in the door early so that they have, again, equitable access to opportunity. So that's the first brief, and we released that in March, and we'll be doing some more conversations about the specific findings there. But then the other two briefs that are coming out, the one that will come out this month, we'll talk about the findings of and the differentiation between skill attainment and growth mindset in our summer programming versus our school year programming. And not to give away everything there, but we think that the next paper is going to be a real signal as to why we need better continuity between our school year programming and our summer programming for students so that they're getting a full arc of experience and getting a bunch of skill attainment generally around essential skills during the school year that can prepare them even better to get the technical skill development in an internship or a paid work-based learning experience during the summer. So that's the next one that'll come out in the next 2 weeks.
So look, I know that anybody that's genuinely interested in the research is going to sign on to listen to the further interviews with the program team, with the evaluation team members. But when you talk about this notion of the needed continuity between the summer and the school year, I know we were intentional about framing this paper as reimagining pathways to student success. And that's not accidental. There's a lot of excitement in the city right now about Mayor Adams and Chancellor Banks' leadership at the Department of Education and this idea of reimagining pathways to students. So why is the work that Pencil's doing so important to that broader city goal of connecting every student to a viable career pathway and to future economic security?
Yeah, I think that it goes back to a comment in a question you had earlier, which was, we did all this work, but it wasn't just to cover the crisis of the moment. All right. We were able to innovate and find interesting and compelling results in some of the new programs we had to create by necessity. And now one could say, well, it's not necessary to do virtual work or simulated internships or, think about the summer and school year continuity, because we can just go back to the old way, right? But we know that the old way certainly doesn't work for all students and could work better for all students. So we need to think about what were these real gems of innovation that occurred over the last 2 years and even beyond that, but how can we lift up and scale the gems of innovation to, again, reimagine what student success could look like? What are those pathways? How do we construct those pathways with and for students with great clarity so that students aren't confused on where they're going, our partners aren't confused, educators have all the support that they need and capacity they need while they're trying to do 8 million things. So the more that we can uncover these gems and point to trends in the field, not just for Pencil, but for all of the hundreds of similar organizations in New York City doing this work, we can just build a better system for the million young people in public schools in New York.
Well, look, I really appreciate the time today. I know this sets up some further conversations with members of the team, but I think as New York is beginning to emerge from the pandemic and beginning to reimagine student pathways, I know I'm really excited, our board is really excited about the work that you and the Pencil team have done to really contribute to that reimagining, and excited to see where this takes us and the further impact we can have. So Jessica, great to finally have this conversation out in public.
Great. Thanks, Greg. And everybody that's listening, stay tuned for the next paper to be released before the end of the month.